Alright, so in this video we are going to go into how exactly to set up Windows 10. So this is going to happen when you essentially get your laptop for the first time or your desktop for the first time, meaning if you bought a brand new computer, you're going to likely have to go through this process of setting up Windows 10 or the newest operating system, which typically, depending on whether you have an Apple product or Windows, or I should say, or more of like what I guess people would consider more of the typical standard operation, which is going to be like Windows. Essentially what you're going to then have is one of the two setups. But when it comes to Windows, things do get updated over time, meaning there's going to be other new updates for the future. So if Windows 10 is not the newest one, then just go through setting that up as well. I'm sure it'll be in a very similar format, but for now, the case is setting up Windows 10, and again, that is like the newest operating system, and that's important to have the newest operating system so that way your computer functions properly. Now, what you're going to want to do is I'm going to take you through these steps here, and essentially what these steps are is actually support from HP, which is this is technically their steps here, but essentially I want to add my own take too as far as what to do in my experience and add some things on top of this too to make this extra valuable too as far as what to do in the beginning. Alright, so the first thing that you should note is that when it comes to this whole process, try to, if possible, do not restart or turn off your computer during the setup process. As it says, it could damage the data on the computer if you do that. In other words, just not good for your computer. So try not to do that. As soon as you get started with this process, make sure that your laptop or computer is able to stay on the whole time. And especially watch out for laptops where if you got a brand new laptop, it might not be fully charged. So consider getting that charging while you're doing this. Okay, so the first thing then you're going to want to do is turn on your computer, and it should take you automatically to the start of the setup process for Windows 10. So what you're then going to want to do is then essentially go through the first question, and that's typically going to be exactly kind of in regards to either your location and also to, as it shows here, making sure that you have then the correct keyboard layout, because that can vary per country due to, different languages and things of that sort. So click whatever one is correct for you. Then the next thing is then it's going to ask you something in regards to you want to add a second keyboard layout. You are likely going to want to click skip to that. Next is then it's going to want to get you connected to a network, which is essentially your Wi-Fi. So this is a whole other thing that you will need if you don't already know that, meaning like you can buy a computer, which is a desktop or laptop, but you're also going to need an internet connection, which is going to be done through essentially Wi-Fi. So you'll need to essentially have some type of Wi-Fi package bought, and it's typically done on a monthly basis, and it's often very, very affordable. And essentially, that's what's going to give you a network, which is, again, how you can essentially access the internet. So then from there, you will want to click which one is yours. You can actually custom name your Wi-Fi. You can have people actually do this for you. So, if you're really confused about this or haven't done this, there are plenty of companies out there that'll have people sent out to you that do this for you. Or you can even do it by yourself at home as well when it comes to like setting up your what's called a router. And that is what gives you Wi-Fi. So that's basically electronic that you'll need in order to have Wi-Fi. But then there's also those Wi-Fi services too that you would need on top of that. I know it sounds really confusing, but it's actually not too confusing when you basically kind of get the idea of that you just need a router and also the service called essentially online internet access, Wi-Fi essentially. So all those are really easy to find and super common. So once you do have that, eventually it should show up as one of the strongest signals. And if you named it, for an example, testing 1 2 3, that's what you basically called your network. For an example here, it would show up here. That's how you know it's yours. You would click connect, and if you haven't already signed into it, it'll ask for a password that you gave your Wi-Fi, so you'll have to enter that in. And then once you put that password in, it'll then essentially then move you forward to the next screen. That next screen will just be the Windows 10 license agreement. You can feel free to read this. This is like a lot of legal information. Probably 99.9% of people don't read this. However, you don't have to be that amount of people. You could read all that if you'd like. Essentially, you can't move forward with this whole thing until you say accept. And if you don't agree with something, well, essentially then you can't really move forward. So in other words, it's just legal information. Everyone presses accept because essentially for the most part, you don't really have a choice going around it. So accept. After that, then it could even ask you to sign in if you have a Microsoft account. Otherwise, if you don't, you can actually click create an account here. And then after signing in and whatnot, it can actually even ask you some more information and whatnot. And that can be your first name, last name, kind of like, what country you live in and whatnot. And you can do some other things as well as far as registering your device, which overall, honestly, I'd say when it comes to this, you don't need that. I'd actually unclick all that. You just don't need that. And then once you move forward enough, it'll actually kind of go into this loading page where it's just telling you how far it's gone as far as downloading the information it needs to in order to run Windows 10. That is going to take some time. It really depends on the different parts that you have in your computer as far as how long it's going to take. If you have more typically expensive parts, those are going to run faster than typically your least lower expensive parts. When I say that, I mean like laptops that are say let's say $1,000. Those are typically going to run a lot better than laptops that are $250. So again, it just depends on what parts are in the laptops themselves, or even desktops as well. And from there, essentially, it should be done hopefully within, I'd say, half an hour to an hour on average. But then when all that information is set in and whatnot, some of this actually can be automatically updated, so it automatically changes it for you. But there are ways on how you can actually essentially change the date and time if you need to. So you would click this, which is going to be at the bottom right hand corner of the screen for you, most likely. And then you'll also, what you can do too is down here in the search, you can type in date, and that'll basically bring this up, which is date and time settings, so you can always change it. And then when you click that, you can get all these different options for you as far as the date and the time and things of that sort. So that'll be really your setup process. It's actually really easy, and it just takes a little bit of time, and it's not even because you're doing it. It's just the program, the software is basically just needs to load. And again, that can typically take anywhere from maybe a half an hour to an hour, depending on what laptop you have or desktop you have. Could be quicker or could be a little slower. It really just depends, but it will eventually get done. Just of course make sure the power stays on the whole time and don't shut off your computer. So with all that said, hopefully that was helpful as far as giving you an idea of how to set up Windows 10. Just follow the prompts or whatever it gives you, even if you're not dealing with Windows 10. Just follow the prompts, and it's designed to make it as easy as possible for you, so that way you can start using your computer to the fullest extent.